You're in Braves country.
Good afternoon, Braves Country special. Guess this is a 12:15 edition. If you're wondering why we're doing the 4:15s and the 12:15s, so if you haven't seen the news, we talked about this a few weeks ago, but the Braves are no longer doing the 12:20 first pitches during the day games during the week. They're no longer doing the 7:20 first pitches in the middle of the week at night. They've moved it to 7:15 and to 12:15. So that's kind of the reasoning behind it, just basically to get everybody accustomed to the new start times. And I still wish that they would do a little earlier. I mean, come on, let's go. But it's a step in the right direction. The whole 20 minutes after the hour, 15 minutes. Most teams do it 5 minutes after the hour and 10 minutes after the hour. I really don't see any kind of advantage to waiting, because if you look at their pregame show that they do on television, it's so in years past it's been 50 minutes of nothing. I mean, they just sit around and talk about nothing for 50 minutes. So that's the reason why we're doing the 15. We got a lot of stuff we're going to get into today. We are going to do something a little different that we have not tried yet. I've got a crystal ball, and we're going to have some fun with that at the end of the show. But we are looking at basically wrapping up the winter meetings as they come to an end. Most of the folks at the winter meetings are starting to catch their planes and get out of Dodge, and they go back home at this point, and basically they're going to match all their notes. Now, the rumor came out last night, and you can take it for a grain of salt. It doesn't really matter in the big scheme of things because nothing happened. But supposedly the Braves were heavy in on Garrett Crochet. But who were they willing to give up? It's good to see everybody in the chat. Please smash the like. And if you got anything that you specifically want to talk about, please feel free to go ahead and fire away. But essentially what we're looking at right now is, so evidently the Braves were trying to put a package together to bring in Garrett Crochet. Now, if you didn't see the news today, one of the things that jumped out off the page today was that Jared Jones of the Pittsburgh Pirates, if you're not familiar with him, he had an ERA a little over 4, but he was battling some injuries last year. He's been looked upon as their second gun. Obviously, Paul Skeens is the elite arm, but he's a pretty damn good pitcher and a young pitcher with controllable seasons left to go. So when you look at a real possibility, if we were in and trying to make a trade for Garrett Crochet, and maybe the Braves didn't want to give up a ton of prospects, because you see what the Red Sox gave up. The Red Sox got hosed. I mean, if you really look at the big picture of that, now I get it that they were trying to compete because this was very, essentially, they were reacting to what the Yankees had just done with signing Max Fried. But you look at the fact that they gave up 4 of their top 15 prospects, 2 guys that are basically slam dunk studs, for only 2 controllable years left with Garrett Crochet. And this is a guy who's battled injury, Tommy John surgery. He hasn't had a ton of experience up top. I can understand why the Braves were hesitant to make a move, because in all likelihood, they were not going to be able to compete and give a big-time contract to Garrett Crochet. So they were looking at it as a 2-year rental. We might just be giving, 1 or 2 prospects away. They took 4. Thank you very much, James. I appreciate that. As, the Christmas just around the corner. What are we, less than 2 weeks away? It's unbelievable that it's already here. Depending on where you live at, I guess it's not unbelievable. But Honest Engine, it is to me, because it just got cold again yesterday down here, but it has been pretty darn. Go ahead and hit the magic sound. Boop. Thank you once again, James. But it just got cold again here yesterday. I mean, when it's in the 80s, it doesn't feel like Christmas. It didn't really feel like Thanksgiving. It warmed up just before Thanksgiving actually hit here. So we got another rush of cold weather. I'm hoping we get at least cool weather. We don't have to have cold, but I'd like to have cool weather, right? Cool weather here for Christmas. It feels more like Christmas. But back to what I was talking about. You wonder who they may be getting. See, John says he's getting 2 feet of snow, 40 miles an hour wind. You can keep that. I don't necessarily want that, John, but I would like to. Right now it's in the 50s outside, and it's it's sunny. That's perfect Christmas weather. I just have my doubts it'll be the way it normally plays out down here on the First Coast. Is you end up with about you could get away with shorts on Christmas Day normally, but you look at the big time pieces that the Braves would be asked for. In other words, these aren't necessarily the ones that the Braves want to get rid of, but these are the ones that teams are going to be asking for, okay? And so we're going to start that up with Smoke 'em if you got them.
Read all about it.
What's all the shouting?
Okay, so number 1 with the bullet here. I brought this up last night on X. If you ever want to follow us on X, it's we're a Braves Country X, and I don't tweet a whole lot, but when stuff comes to mind, or if I think about stuff that's trending, primarily Atlanta Braves. I follow other sports, but I usually go to a secondary account for that. I'm trying to keep the Braves Country X primarily with baseball or Atlanta Braves, Major League Baseball, but. I was curious. I was like, when did Chris Sale, when did that damn trade take place? Because in my mind, it was closer to Christmas. And then I go and I look it up. It was December 30th last year. So we're still 2.5 weeks, almost 3 weeks away from a year ago when we were thinking, man, we haven't really done much here in the offseason. And bam, here comes the big pick. So what you got to look at what Anthopoulos is doing right now is he's going back to Atlanta, and I know a lot of people think they're not working. There's a lot of jokes and memes that go around social media. Trust me, those folks are burning the midnight oil, and they're comparing notes and say, well, what did this team tell you? What are they looking for? What do you think we can package together? And I wanted to kind of talk about the top prospects in the Braves organization that could be moved. They don't want to move them all, but we're probably going to, if we're going to get someone like Chris says that is, he thinks Atlanta is starting to look for someone who's underperforming, and that would probably be in the free agent market. guys that we've talked about earlier this week. I won't go on and on about that, but just certain pitchers, and I'm specifically talking about pitchers right now. We are going to get into outfielders because I still think the shortstop is either going to be a platoon situation or they're going to pull off a trade that nobody's really expecting. I don't think Bo Bichette's going to get moved because if you listen to the Toronto GM, he sounded like that they're willing to run Bichette back out there this year, and coming off of an injury-riddled season, he thinks he's going to get much more. So if you make a move for Bo Bichette, realize they're going to try to take everything you got. And Anthopoulos is not the type. Anthopoulos is not the type of person you want to play in poker. I can tell you right now. There's a lot of people on social media. I'll be like, man, I'd like to play that SOB in poker because I guarantee you he or she doesn't know what the hell they're doing because they just want to throw all their chips in just to get one prospect back or one starter back. But you look at to the point of, well, Gary's saying that he's not happy with that AA hasn't done anything yet. Once again, Gary, this time last year we hadn't really done anything. We hadn't done anything at all. Chris Sale came in just before the New Year's. But talking about Chris's comment about guys that are underperforming. So if we go for guys who underperformed last year, honestly, he was in our backyard. I mean, he's standing right in front of us, right? He is in our backyard, and that is Charlie Morton. Charlie Morton is a person that, honest engine, when you look at where we are and where we're going into this year, and because of the salary constraints, the guy that really comes to me more than anybody else is Charlie Morton, because you could probably get him for a very cheap rate, and he goes back out there. I don't think he's getting anywhere near what we had been talking about before. Remember, we were talking about before where he was, the last few years, what's he been making, like $20 million? They're not paying nobody's paying Charlie Morton $20 million. But what they are going to do is they're going to probably go to Charlie Morton if all else fails and says, hey, the Braves want to go out here and they want to bring you back, but we're talking about bringing you back at a much cheaper rate. Talking about $8 to $10 million, which would be my guess. I don't think they would absolutely lowball him because of what he's done for the past for him. He's eating innings, but that's not a guy that's really going to move the needle, is it? It's not someone you're going to go, yay, Charlie's back. And Charlie must not be getting a lot of feedback because Charlie Morton, his camp has released that he does want to play this year and he's open to signing with anybody. I don't know if that's necessarily true. Charlie Morton wants to stay fairly close to home, but he's probably opening himself up to possibly playing for someone who, like a Tampa Bay Rays. I don't see Charlie Morton wanting to, where he is in his life with his kids and his family, I don't see him wanting to go somewhere up in the Northeast or way out west. But maybe he'd be willing to go somewhere closer by. Maybe not if Atlanta is not interested in him. And it hasn't shown that they have been very interested in him, but maybe they're trying to see what's out there on the market, and they can always circle back and offer them what they have left. But when you talk about the guys with lower expectations, if you brought them in, it would be a guy like an Andrew Heaney. It would be a guy like a Wade Miley. These are literally just innings eaters. Walker Buehler, it has came out that he does indeed is looking for and will not settle for anything but a multi-year deal. And when they start saying multi-year deal, they're really talking about 3 to 4 years. They're not talking about 2 years. So I would think 3 years would be minimum with Buehler. And if he's not getting a high AAV, he's probably going to have an opt-out at the end of this year. And I'd be fine with that. If we go out, and let's say we sign Walker Buehler to a deal, almost like a prove-it deal. Because at one point, Buehler was one of the better ones in baseball before all the injuries hit. And let's say you go out and you say, hey, we're willing to offer you, we'll say 3 years, somewhere around the 45 range, right? If they took that And Bueller said, all right, we'll do that, but we want an opt-out after year one because if we reset our market, we want to get paid. If I'm the Braves, I'm like, that's fine. That's fine. Now, I want an opt-out maybe after year two. Because if you don't get it together in 2 years, maybe it's time for me to move on from you. The other thing that you have to look at is that Ian Anderson's out of options. So if Ian Anderson comes up with the team this year, people keep talking about Ian Anderson being a pitcher that could come in and be a part of the rotation this year. And I'm not doubting him, but it's been a while since we've seen Ian Anderson. And if he comes in to take a starting rotation spot, it's literally sink or swim because they're going to give him a handful of starts. But if he goes out there and struggles, Ian Anderson's going to be gone. Now, one thing that you have to understand if you're a Braves fan and you were here last year and you're like, we have made no moves. This is going to be the same team we rolled out there last year, except we're going to be missing Max Fried. The only thing I'll say to that is this team is gaining back a former MVP in Ronald Acuna Jr. at some point this year. They're bringing in, I think, one of the best right-handed arms in all of baseball in Spencer Strider. Those are two pretty big moves, and I know they're already part of the team, but you got to look at that. That's going to make the team better. Also, let's not forget Austin Riley. We didn't have him for the last 2 months. That killed us. We're going to get a left-handed switch hitting second baseman once again. Ozzie Albies should be ready to hit from the left side of the plate once again. So there are some things that just by the fact that these guys are going to come back healthy, we're going to be a much better team. But I know that's not what we're looking at. You're asking about Crochet to the Red Sox. That happened yesterday. That is a done deal. It is in ink. The White Sox officially announced it. Was that 6:30, 7 o'clock last night? Anyways, that's a done deal. He is gone. The main thing that I will say here is when you talk about these prospects and who are we willing to give up, and it's a big who. Let's look at the fact that you got Cam Caminiti, the Braves' number one prospect. Now they just drafted him. He's 18 years old. If you trade him, someone is making a trade for him for years down the road. Like right now, he's being expected to be able to hit the major leagues in 2028. That's probably not someone that somebody wants to go in on unless it is a Pittsburgh Pirates, right? If the Pittsburgh Pirates go out there and say, hey, we'll give you Jared Jones for Cam Caminiti, and Caminiti has the sky's the limit with that kid, and yes, he is the son of Ken. Caminiti is a kid that I could see the Pirates saying, we want to reset and have as many bullets coming out of the farm because we're eventually going to lose Paul Skeens. Maybe that's an option. But in all likelihood, who we're going to be talking about, A.J. Smith-Shawver is the number 2 ranked prospect right now in the Atlanta Braves organization. And he's expected to be in the rotation this year. I kind of would like to see what Smith-Shawver could do. Same thing with Hurston Waldrop. He is our number 3 prospect, okay? The number 3 prospect in the organization. But I would kind of like to see what he could do because they're expecting him to make a big-time contribution this year. So I'm not in love with trading either one of those guys. Caminiti, I could live with it. Owen Murphy, who just had Tommy John last year, and he was one of the Braves' top prospects, but they're not expecting him to make a real commitment to a real contribution to a team, I should say, until 2027. He could be back from Tommy John next year, but considering that he has so few innings down on the minors, you kind of expect him next year when he comes back from Tommy John to spend most of the year, if not all the year, down on the farm. So the real guys that you're talking about that could be traded that people would say, all right, I'll give you a bona fide starter right now, but we want A.J. Smith-Shawver. We want Hurston Waldrop. We want Nacho Alvarez. We want Drake Baldwin. Those are your top 5 guys in the farm system. Owen Murphy is ranked 6th, and then you got J.R. Ritchie, who is only a few years away in his own right, and he is ranked 7th. Jose Perdomo, the shortstop, is ranked 8th, but once again, he is an 18-year-old kid that no one expects to see in the next 5 years. So these aren't guys that you can pull up. In other words, we have that big hole at shortstop. Nacho Alvarez could end up being the platoon with Orlando Arcia. But from what we saw last year, to me, he looked overmatched at the plate. He's a light-hitting shortstop. I would rather package him and let somebody take him and give us an arm. Give us an outfielder. He's only 5'11", by the way. 5'11", 190 pounds. So I don't think Nacho Alvarez is ever going to really have that much power. There's very few Jose Altuves out there in the world. Another name that you're going to hear bounced around is Drew Hackenberg, 22-year-old right-hander, and they're expecting him to come up possibly as early as next year, maybe even early this year. But Drew Hackenberg and then Cade Kuehler. Anyone else that I haven't mentioned is outside the top 10. And though there will probably be guys that will be moved in deals, because you're not just going to grab your top 3, top 4. You're going to grab a combination of guys to bring in like a Jared Jones. I really like the idea of going and getting Jared Jones. I've seen Jared Jones pitch several times last year. I think he's not Paul Skeens, but a few kids are. But he is just a notch below him. Just a notch below him. So if we're going to bring in someone like a Dylan Cease, I think someone was talking about him yesterday. You're talking about we're probably going to lose at least 1, if not 2, of our top 10 picks. Or 10 prospects, excuse me. And there's a ton of guys. If you ever really want to go look at the list, just go to MLB.com, and there's a complete list of the top 30 prospects for the Atlanta Braves. But what we're really looking at here is Atlanta is going to continue to try to make a move, and I think they're more going to. I think it's just going to be like last year. I think the biggest move Atlanta makes is going to be a trade, and it's not going to be a free agent signing, just because of the dollars that they're going to be asked to pay on some of these starting pitchers. It's a little insane, and I would rather go out and get a Jared Jones, someone you can probably bring in and get him into an extension. He seems like a very good option to try to extend to one of the club-friendly deals as soon as you get him in uniform, as opposed to a Sonny Gray, though I like Sonny Gray and I like his strikeout to walk ratio, and I like the fact that he keeps the ball on the ground. Sonny Gray's a little more expensive, so how much are you going to have to sit back? So those are the main ones that when we talk about the pitching, we're talking about. If we're talking about someone who underperformed, you're talking about some of the guys that I just mentioned, but maybe a Nick Pivetta, maybe a Cal Quantrill, who actually did really well last year, flew under the radar. And I've been a big fan of Colin Ray for a while, and he's going to be affordable. He's going to be 35 at some point this year. And he's a guy you can put in the bullpen if you get something better on the starting pitching end. John Means, to me, is still a very interesting player because you could bring some of these guys. You could go out and get some of these guys on non-guaranteed contracts and pay them just above league minimum and let them compete in spring training. John Means, to me, is an interesting one. A few years back, before his big injury, he was a Cy Young favorite. Rich Hill, I've seen his name bounce around. Man, I'm not a big fan of Rich Hill. He's going to be 45. And look, yeah, if you get him on league minimum, okay. If he doesn't work out in the starting rotation, he does have a lot of experience down in the bullpen. all right. But if we're talking about giving him anything above league minimum at 45 years old, man, come on. And he's not going to be an answer. A guy that is interesting to me, and he is ranked pretty well down there, is Brad Keller. Brad Keller, the former Pittsburgh Pirate, kind of fallen off the radar past few years, but he is a free agent. He's only 29 years old. Yeah, John, he's 45. He's 40. I think he'll be 45 right at opening day. I'm talking about Rich Hill. Johnny Cueto is someone else people have bounced around out there. He's going to be 39 before opening day. So once again, we all know Father Time's undefeated. Carlos Carrasco is another one they keep talking about. He's going to be 38. So these are guys you wouldn't pay more than league minimum. You may not even have a guaranteed deal. Try to bring him into camp. You can tell the Braves didn't think much of Griffin Canning because he's not even 29 yet, and they kicked him to the curb. I thought he might be someone that they were going to allow to possibly compete for either a bullpen. I thought he made much more sense as a bullpen because he does have a live arm, but they kicked him out altogether. Mike Clevenger is another one of these types of guys. So I don't see them landing Jack Flaherty. I don't see the Corbin Burns thing is never going to happen. There's no way on God's green earth that the Braves are good because Corbin Burns is going to get a bigger contract than Max Fried. And if they were going to pay that kind of nonsense, they would have gotten Max Fried. I guarantee you Max Fried would have came back to Atlanta for a lot cheaper than what he went to New York for. But the Braves are not going anywhere near that. There's no way that they're going to let Corbin Burns reset the market as an Atlanta Brave. It's just not going to happen. Corbin Burns is going to go one of your usual suspects. He's going to end up in New York, Los Angeles, maybe the Red Sox, but I doubt it after the Crochet trade. And the other guys that are, to me, are interesting. Does Justin Verlander just go back to the Astros on a club-friendly deal? Does he possibly go back to Detroit? Because Detroit is a real contender now. The same thing with Max Scherzer. Where does Max Scherzer end up at? I believe Max Scherzer is cooked. Every time I've watched him the last few years, when you get him past the second time through a lineup, you cannot rely on him. So if you bring a Max Scherzer in, he's literally going to have to be a guy that you're going to know that come playoff time, he is a 4-inning guy. And you can't pay a ton of money to that. Not to mention he's 40. Justin Verlander's 40 is going to be 42 soon. So if you're going to do that, you're probably more likely to just give a club-friendly deal to Charlie Morton and call it a day. Now let's go into the actual hitters. We haven't really talked much about the hitters, and there's some interesting candidates out there. Teoscar Hernandez, to me, is highly unlikely. He is a guy that they're expecting to land a deal somewhere above $20 million a year and somewhere in the 3 to 4 year range. And I just don't see any way on God's green earth that the Braves are going to compete with that. The Dodgers have already offered him 3 years, $60. So if the Dodgers have offered him 3 years, $60, the Braves are going to have to beat that, probably by a considerable amount. I don't see it happening. It's more likely that the Yankees step up and spend some money. That the if you missed the news earlier, was it last night or maybe or this morning? But the Mets are talking about trading Starlin Marte for relief pitcher help. Before anyone brings that up, he is done. And I don't know why anybody would want Starlin Marte. I've always liked Starlin Marte as a hitter. He's a very good professional baseball hitter. But his youth is gone, so he no longer really has that speed factor. His power has dwindled off. And when you talk about someone like that, you're really talking about a guy that honestly if they make a trade for Marte for relief pitching, I really think it's what they're trying to do is a salary dump. But who wants to take him on? So that'll be interesting to see if there's any takers, because I don't see him being a hot commodity. Someone was asking about Max Kepler. Max Kepler's going to be 32 years old. He would be an interesting candidate. He made, $7 million last year. That's probably a little low for what he would take this year. But he is coming off of kind of a down year for Kepler. But he would literally be a platoon-type player. He's not someone you want to stick out there every day. And do you want another left-handed bat? That's a big question to me. Because remember, Acuna's not going to be there until somewhere towards June, July, somewhere in that neighborhood. Best case scenario would be May, but I just don't see Acuna being there by May. So if you sign a Kepler and you're like, okay, we can put Kelenic and Kepler and Harris, they're all left-handed bats. And usually general managers don't want to do that. I think it's more likely that they take a swing at if you're going to go left-handed bat, for me, the more bang for your buck, and I think you can get him at a decent amount. And he's kind of a loose cannon, but that Jesse Winker can swing the bat. Santander is a pipe dream. Mark, I see your question about Anthony Santander. I would love to have Santander. Santander would answer so many questions out there in the outfield. He can play right field until Acuna comes back. He could easily be slid over to left field. But Santander is going to bring a haul in. He made $11 million last year, but that's because he was at the tail end of his arbitration contract. What did he have? 40, 44 home runs? Santander is going to expect at least Teoscar Hernandez money. At least. I don't like the Mark Kanya deal. I know some people have thrown that name out there. The reason why I don't like Mark Kanya is because he gets overpaid for what he actually brings to the plate. He's 36. He'll be 36 at opening day. To me, he's cooked. If I'm going to do that, I'm going to take a chance on Eloy Jimenez, who's played terribly last year, but he had that kind of talent. He's 28 years old, maybe in a new team with the new hitting coach hire, maybe he could turn him around. And you do wonder how much influence he will have in the picks. I really do, because I wonder when they go to our new hitting coach, Coach Hire, if he is going to go out there and tell by tape or maybe someone he's worked with before and say, I think I can do something with this guy. So we have to keep that in mind. You always got the Tommy Phams out there, but he's the biggest thing we've always heard about Tommy Pham is that he's a locker room cancer. He's a good player. He's a locker room cancer. Jesse Winker is another guy that, I was just talking about him. If we're going to bring in a lefty, I think he's a much more affordable lefty. And I'll tell you what, if you're doing all these guys, why don't you just bring Whit Merrifield back, who can play all over the damn place? He can play in the infield. He can play in the outfield. And Whit Merrifield would be very affordable, because I don't think he's going to get – what did he make last year, Merrifield? He had they have his previous number wrong, because I remember we picked him up. He got league minimum from us after we picked him up, but before we picked him up, I think he signed somewhere around, I want to say it was $8 million. I don't think he's going to get that. He's going to be 36 years old, but Whit Merrifield to me would be a perfect addition for the depth of your team, but you don't want to spend more than about 3, maybe 4 on him, because you still have other needs. But it would be an interesting move if they were to bring him back. Same thing with Ramon Laureano. Ramon Laureano, I think you could get him back very cheap, and Ramon Laureano really started to hit. He really started to hit. Ramon Laureano is a guy that when he finally got his feet under him in Atlanta and got regular at bats, he was one of our better batters as far as who I called the mash unit, the guys that were in there that we didn't expect to be in there. Another interesting one would be Brian De La Cruz, former Marlin. I think he finished up with the Pirates last year. But De La Cruz is a guy, he's a right-handed bat. He plays outfield. He's got some pop. He would be interesting. Kevin Pillar says he wants to play again this year. I just don't think he has much left in him. But I will give him this. He played much better last year with the Angels than he did with the Braves the previous year. And then, of course, the one that everybody keeps asking about when we need to go ahead and touch on him, Jurickson Profar. Profar is going to be 32 years old. He made just over league minimum last year because he couldn't find the spot that he wanted. But if you could get him anywhere around the $5 million range, and even if it's just a one-year deal to reset, whatever, go out there and prove you can do it outside of where you are in San Diego. I think Profar would be my ideal ad on where we are as far as if you could do your ideal ad right now, to me it's Jurickson Profar. My question is, with him coming off of a $24 home run year, how many millions does that equate in his mind and in his agent's mind? Jurickson Profar, 24 home runs. Let's say he comes to Atlanta and only gives you 20. Let's say he comes to Atlanta and he can still steal about 20 bags. He plays very solid defense out in left field. He's not great, but he's not going to be a Zuna out there tripping over his own feet. He's a good base runner. Profar to me would be the ideal candidate, but how much is he expecting? And that's going to be where the biggest issues lie. All right, let's go ahead and have some fun here with someone just sent me this thing. It's a crystal ball. I thought we'd have some fun with this, and I'm hoping you can hear it. If you can't hear it, then it is what it is, but I'm hoping you can hear this thing. So let me go ahead and touch the top of the crystal ball the first time.
Everything points to yes.
All right, everything points to yes. All right, where we go with everything points to yes, and I'm looking at folks that are out there that have been rumored for us. I'm going to go with A.J. Minter on this one. Everything points to yes. I think A.J. Minter does come back as a Brave. I think we're going to look at A.J. Minter down the road and say that he is a guy that the Braves have to bring back. They're talking about 2 years, $16 million. I think that's fair. Now, it depends on when they're projecting him to come back. But I think that one's fair. All right, let's see if we do this one again.
Definitely yes.
Definitely yes. I am going to go with the definitely yes. I'm going to go with the platoon at the shortstop position. I just believe that the shortstop position, it's not going to be Orlando Arcia's to win or lose or spit the bit. I think they're going to have a backup plan, whether they bring Nacho Alvarez and say you're going to be the guy competing with Arcia and whoever plays the best gets the most play time, or do they move Nacho Alvarez for a veteran? But I don't believe that Orlando Arcia is going to be the answer. All right, let's see what we got on the next one. No. And that one would be with the no. I'm going to go with, oh, man. I hate to say this out loud, but I'm going to go ahead and go with that. I think Sonny Gray's probably going to be a no. I hate that idea. I really wish that Sonny Gray would be a guy that we could bring in. but something tells me that, by the way, there's a report coming out right now that Charlie Morton's unlikely to return to the Braves. I don't know if I believe everything that I see on these bottom lines, but take it with a grain of salt. But I think Sonny Gray is going to be a guy that we're not going to be able to make it work because they're not going to want to eat enough money. That's one of the biggest things with the Cardinals is that they don't want to eat the money. They want to send you a prospect who's being paid a ton, and then they don't want to eat any of the money. It's more likely that we pull off a Sonny Gray move at the trading deadline. All right, let's see what else we got here.
The answer cannot be found at this moment.
The answer cannot be found at this moment. And I think that would definitely be big move before Christmas Eve. I have that jotted down as one of our questions. The answer cannot be found at this moment. Christmas Eve is what, less than 2 weeks away. We talked about the fact that Chris Sale, that move was made just before New Year's Day. I believe it was the 30th. It seems like that something's coming, but whether or not they'll get it in before Christmas Eve is a totally different story. Let's do one more.
Yes, it is certain.
Yes, it is certain. All right. The yes that it is certain, and I'm just going to go out on a limb here. I did not expect to see in the news this morning that Jared Jones was going to be out on the trade market. I'm going to piggyback this off of something. Alex Bregman, I believe we get an answer to where he goes either today or tomorrow. Sometime by the end of this week, I think Alex Bregman's going to have a brand new jersey on. When the Bregman move hits, we're really looking for two more big fish to come off the market. Bregman and Burns. And when those two get moved, things are going to start flying. I like the Braves to make the move to go get Jared Jones. If it is a legitimate offer out there for the Pirates to actually want to get rid of Jared Jones, and maybe they just want to get younger. And I know Jared Jones is young. I get that. But let's say they're saying we want to reset where we're at, and we want to we'll give you Jared Jones, and maybe we take, whether it's Drake Baldwin, Nacho Alvarez, Cam Minnitti. I just don't know if the Braves are willing to give up on Smith Shawver and Waldrop, because I believe that they want those two to compete for the number 5 spot. But Jared Jones to me, he's the answer. He's the poor man's version of Garrett Crochet. Well, hate to tell you, Braves country, but we're the poor man's version of most baseball franchises that are in the mix. The Braves are still one of the top baseball teams going into next year. They're going to be in the top 5, I guarantee you, of whatever the moves we make. They're going to be in the top 5 of teams that will be expected to possibly win the World Series. But the Braves have to be a little slicker than others. The Red Sox are fine with pushing out 4 prospects because they'll eventually spend that money and get Garrett Crochet back. The Braves are going to be looking for a Jared Jones. Maybe it's someone else off the board, but that's where I'm sticking with. We normally do these shows, guys. If you haven't really caught this before, Winter Meetings was a little different this week. But starting back next Friday, we'll be back here at 4:15 on Fridays until now. If something pops, that's why you want to like and subscribe. If something pops, we're going to jump on for a reaction to whatever big Braves moves that is made. But if nothing else is made in the next, what would that be, 8 days, then we will be here back next Friday, 4:15. Not doing a show tomorrow, wife's birthday, so we got stuff going on there. But appreciate everybody stopping in and possibly. I like Reese Olson too. I like that call, 88. But and Reese Olson, Georgia boy. But if you get Reese Olson from Detroit, Reese Olson would guarantee you could get him into a very club-friendly deal long term. But we'll see you next Friday, 4:15. And, well, we're coming up to 1 o'clock hour, not the 5 o'clock hour, but it's 5 o'clock somewhere. Slam up, sissies. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you one more time before Christmas. Hopefully there's something under the Atlanta Braves Christmas tree.
You're in Braves country.